Hello, I'm Andrea Klein-Thomas. ISPOR is exploring the challenges and opportunities of patient-centered research. I'm joined now by Rebecca Edelmayer. Thank you for being with us. Now, what are the key challenges facing research as we seek to incorporate research endpoints that are most relevant to patients?
Well, we've been thinking a lot about making sure that persons with lived experience, that could be patients, that could be their caregivers, maybe study partners, how we're including their voice in how we design research studies, how we develop those studies to really approve new treatments. One of the things that's really critical is that we make sure that we design our clinical trials with that voice included to be most representative of all of our communities.
And what are some of the questions that should be asked, that should be considered when doing this?
Well, when we think about including the lived experience or the patient voice, we can think about doing that through a number of different avenues. We know that the FDA has a number of ways to convene patients together, as well as their caregivers, to incorporate their lived experience in study design and what would be most important for the types of outcomes they would want from those research studies. But we also know that it's important to continue to listen to patients and their communities on what's most challenging for them, making sure that we understand those challenges so that they can then incorporate that as part of the benefits, as well as the types of things that they should be looking in terms of safety for any new treatments that are being approved.
What progress is being made that kind of excites you or gives you hope?
Well, I can give you some experience from the Alzheimer's disease and dementia field. The Alzheimer's disease field has really seen some new treatments approved really just in the past few years that are really changing the game for individuals with Alzheimer's disease. These are new treatments that are slowing down the disease process. And this type of treatment was approved by the FDA with information from patients and lived experience about what would be most important to them and the types of treatments that they would like to see as options for them in the doctor's office. What's most important to them is more time. They want to see their disease progression slow down, and these are the types of treatments that are being approved today.
And what have been the outcomes?
So some of the outcomes for patients that we recognize is that in Alzheimer's disease, cognitive and functional change continues to decline over time in this disease process. But what we're trying to do is stop the disease in its tracks, slow it down, and halt those changes from happening so people can live more independently at earlier stages of the disease process. That's what we're hearing from patients. Their experience is that they would like more time with independence, more time to do things that they want to do with their families, whether they're still working, whether they're raising their grandchildren, whether they're raising even their own children. These are the types of experiences that we want included in patient-focused drug development. And those are the types of things that we should be listening to as we develop new therapies.
Selena Daniels with the United States Food and Drug Administration stresses the importance of seeking regulatory input from the start.
Sponsors are planning to collect patient experience data in their development program. The main reason for them to come and seek our input is to get advice and consultation. There's many different aspects of the patient experience and different methods to collect patient experience data, so it's always good to get that advice. I think as regulators as a sounding board, we can tell sponsors that they are heading in the right direction or maybe they need to take a different course of action. We do recognize that they are their experts in their product and that they might have a certain strategy in mind. However, we do look at their strategy in a different lens in terms of, how can it help us with our regulatory review and evaluation? And potentially maybe by addressing our advice in their development program, this can avoid, unwanted, review issues. We may not fully understand, what their patient experience data is going to support. Is it going to support their trial design, their outcomes, their endpoints? And so knowing and for them to think about that up front, it can help us to understand and provide them the advice and push them in the right direction.
And now Elisabeth Oehrlein shares how to best measure patient engagement.
We're doing a lot of work, and the broader community is doing a lot of work nowadays to figure out best practices for measuring outcomes that matter to patients. So what are those processes, what are those methods that we need to do to systematically understand what matters to patients who are representative of the target patient population? But then also, on the flip side is what are methods for measuring the impact that patient engagement is having. And so we're starting to see some really exciting examples emerging of companies and nonprofits and other groups who are starting to help us with metrics for how do we make sure that we're systematically measuring and understanding Did we do a good job of patient engagement in a specific project? What were actually the impacts of those insights that we learned from patients on decisions that we made later? Are there differences that we might make next time as a result of measuring those impacts? And also, how can we learn from those types of impacts? And it's only going to be through systematically asking questions and collecting data that we'll be able to come back and improve processes going forward. So it's an exciting time when it comes to measuring patient engagement in lots of different settings. More on the disease-specific level, we're starting to see core outcome sets developed. There's been a lot of work to make sure that when we develop a systematic set, that we develop a set of outcomes that we want to measure across different contexts, whether it's in drug development or if it's in healthcare delivery or in some other type of context, that we are doing such in a way that we're actually measuring the things that patients and caregivers care about, but also that other actors in the health system care about. So there's been a lot of exciting work to figure out better methods for raising patient voices in multi-stakeholder discussions, where you're agreeing upon what are those outcomes that should be measured consistently in obesity or in cardiovascular disease or in something else. And so I think that's a really useful exercise for us to develop an evidence base that's broadly useful for decision making.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Andrea Klein-Thomas. For more key topics about issues in healthcare, go to our website, ISPOR.org.